Right, here we go. Cool. So, good afternoon again for joining us. This is our training for VRAP, um, which will be discussing the benefits and utilization of the service. For some housekeeping rules, if everybody can just make sure that your mic is muted. I'm going to do my best on my end to make sure that all the microphones are muted upon entry. And if you have any questions, we're going to have a Q&A towards the end of the presentation. If you'd like, you can also type your questions in the chat box, and we'll get to that towards the end. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and begin. I think it looks like your mic might be off, Amelia.
There we go. How about now? Can y'all hear me?
That's good.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thanks. Good afternoon. So my name is Emilia Gaitan Reed, and I'm presenting today with my counterpart, Neoni Sonoro. I tend to provide services to our homeless veteran community in the Central Valley and the High Sierra areas. And at this time, Neoni's covering services for Silicon Valley and the Central Coast. We hope to have another CEC coming on board in the near future, so keep an ear out for that. As far as what it is that we do as community employment coordinators, a big part of what we do is job development outreach in the community. So we look to acquire job leads from employers, businesses really, right, because they are businesses, for veterans that are working within our programs. We look to provide guidance with federal and state vocational programs. That would be the Veterans Benefits Administration, education establishments, the state information that comes through them, such as with the Employment Development Department, VRRAP. Okay, I was muted there for a second, but I think I'm back on. Excuse me. So JVSG is also another one of the programs that we look to provide information and guidance on. That's going to be the Jobs for Veterans State Grant, which is actually provided through the Employment Development Department on the job trainings, SSA, Social Security Administration, California State Unemployment Insurance, and State Disability Insurance, CWT, as well. Just some of the programs that we look to provide guidance and information on. We also look to provide training on LMI, VA benefits, as well as employment-related needs. So resume information, cover letter guidance, mock interviews, information on how it is that you can address, or veterans can address, the criminal history or their criminal history if they have one when it comes to interviews, and of course reasonable accommodations when it comes to working. We also look to collaborate with community service providers from federal, state, city, and nonprofit organizations, and in that collaboration, again, with that guidance on the different programs that they serve. We also look to attend employment events such as virtual job fairs, on-site job fairs, Chamber of Commerce meetings, recruitments at job centers, and more. So just to give you a little bit of an insight on what it is that we do, just a little there. I'll go ahead and hand it on over to Neil.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro. So, so today, like I said, we're going to be talking about VRAP. And so basically what that stands for is Veterans Rapid Retraining Assistance Program. This was just released about a couple of weeks ago by the Department of Labor, or excuse me, by Department of Veterans Affairs, specifically with the VBA, which is the Benefits Administration. So VRAP is it offers an education and training opportunities for high demand jobs to veterans who were unemployed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. VRAP is a very time limited and also time restricted um, type of benefit, meaning this is not something that you're going to see regularly. The last time I've seen VRAP was back in 2013 to 2014. So there's been, from there to now, VRAP is not a very common um, uh, program for veterans to pursue. So VRAP is going to be available until December 11th of 2022. I want to take a much closer look to the verbiage after it because it says we'll stop making payments on December 11th, 2022, or when the participant limit has been reached from 17,250, or if the $386 million funding has been utilized. Now, this could be a good thing because it offers funding for training, but the downside, because of its restriction in time, is that if a veteran fails a class, either by a dropout or by not having a passing grade, or just sickness or moving or what have you, there's a lot of unforeseen situations that can happen. So when that does happen, unfortunately, if if you fail a class and you're getting very close to the end of the program, historically, I've seen VRAP not pay for those classes that you have failed, or if the classes was never taken after the dates that it was approved for. So today, this is where we need to talk about why it's extremely important to not only use that time frame to plan in which class or vocational training to pursue, but we also want to make sure that the training that was taken, that there's also a labor market for the area that the veteran is deciding to live. And because of that timeline, that can weigh heavily on the individual, especially if they failed those classes. And now they're going to have to scramble some ideas in how they can not only finish the program, but to fund the program as well.
Okay, so moving on with VRAP, as far as eligibility goes, all of these must apply to you. So they have to be true of the veteran if they're hoping to qualify for this. So the veteran must be at least 22 years old, but not older than 66, and unemployed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and not rated as totally disabled because you can't work. So they could have 100% disability rating, but if they have 100% disability rating, which totally disables them and keeps them from working, they're not going to be able to use this benefit. And not enrolled in a federal or state jobs program. And we do want you guys to keep in mind that you can't receive VRAP benefits at the same time as you're receiving unemployment benefits. And this is going to include the CARES Act benefits. This could be because of DOL WIOA funding for training and state unemployment regulations for attaining training while receiving unemployment benefits. And you cannot use VRAP if you're already using the post 9/11 GI Bill, the Montgomery GI Bill, the Veteran Readiness and Employment, or better known as VRNE, Survivors and Dependents Educational Assistance, or DEA, Veterans Educational Assistance Program, or VEAP. Another thing to keep in mind, you can get VRAP benefits if you were at one time eligible for the post 9/11 GI Bill, but you've transferred all of your benefits to family members. So something to keep in mind and ask about if it's something that could affect the veteran that you're working with.
So the purpose of VRAP, because of its time restriction as well as its limited availability, its design is to train individuals in an occupation that is considered to be a high demand. And in a way that this is supposed to ensure that the probability of employment upon completion of that program is available. No matter what kind of training that VRAP has approved, there has to be some form of data to show that after I complete this class, I'll be able to get a job. So according to the website, there is a list um, of high demand occupation. I'm going to go ahead and pull this one up already. So this is actually what VRAPS has labeled as high demand occupation. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this in using the California's labor market information to show that, you know, if there is a particular occupation that our veterans want to pursue, we would then be able to use labor market information to determine if the general area where the vet is living has the potential for jobs upon completion of the training. So here's are some of the occupations that are considered to be high demand throughout the country. And to get that kind of information, unfortunately, we'll have to go into specifics of the state's labor market rather than the national labor market. So these are just some examples. You can actually pull this up if you go to the VRAP's website. If you want to do a little bit of research on your own, and you can go ahead and check this out as well.
Okay, and then as far as schools that are approved, there's also a listing available of those, and Leonie's actually just already pulled them up for us. I did a little bit of a search to see what kind of schools training are available out here in our area. San Francisco has a few listings available for certifications. Unfortunately, out in the valley, there doesn't seem to be a lot, but there are a couple. So just keep that in mind. And if a veteran is interested in taking a look at what's available in their area, this is a great list to take a look at so that they can kind of get an understanding and an idea of the kind of certificates that they're hoping to get veterans certified in. But this is actually 27 pages long. And it is, I believe, for all 50 states. So you'll see like Washington, D.C., Michigan, Virginia, New Mexico. So not just California, but training in all areas, all across all 50 states.
Yeah, and to add to
And
that
again,
as well. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when you're scrolling through these, you're going to notice that a lot of the positions tend to be very similar in nature because those are really the jobs that are high in demand. So not really a big thing to say, but go ahead, Yoni.
Thank you. So to add into that, if you've noticed that a lot of the training that is offered are vocational term, meaning it's a certification. And in some instances, like if we look at Eastern New Mexico University here, it does offer an associate's level training, which is the ASS or AAS or the AS here. Now I guess that's somewhat doable because associates are generally going to be 2 years anyways. But in some cases where some of our veterans have had college credits, they can go ahead and apply that to the university and get an associate's degree with the limited time that they get with VRAP. But yeah, a lot of what is offered are all certifications, so it's all vocational training, which I think, in my opinion, is a very great move that the VA is doing, rather than focusing on like a 4-year degree or higher level education, and move towards vocational training instead, where upon completion they can just get back into working. So the link is also in the presentation, so if you'd like to research that as well, I'll give everybody the link to the presentation, and you can do your research on that as well too.
Definitely true to the name, rapid retraining, right? So most of those are going to be shorter training periods for sure.
So for the benefits that the VRAP has to offer is similar to what Post 9/11 has been offering for many years now. But in the VRAP's case, tuition and fees to attend the training institution is covered for up to 12 months. And you also are going to be receiving a sustenance allowance based on the post 9/11 GI Bill rates. I'm going to walk you guys through and see what that kind of looks like for those that want to pursue training. I've also included the BAH calculator, which a lot of service members are very familiar with, which is the defensetravel.dod.mil. And another tool that we're also going to be looking at is the GI Bill comparison tool. And this is one resource that I'd like to use to determine what it would look like to attend a full online only class versus a brick and mortar class. So I'm going to use one example that we did some digging on, and this one specifically, Abco Technologies. So if we go to the GI Bill comparison tool, all right, this stupid little pop-up keeps coming up. Right, so I went ahead and searched for Abco Technology, and this is only going to be an online only. So this person will not be taking any classes. So click on that. So for online only classes, the sustenance allowance, it looks like it's going to be about $871 a month. But if we were to convert that into a brick and mortar, we'll go ahead and take their physical address, then go into the BAH section, type their zip code in, and make sure the pay grade is at E5. Click on calculate. And so approximately, a veteran can earn up to $3,354 untaxed while they are attending that training. So as you can see, the major difference in taking a class from a full online to a brick and mortar is pretty substantial. Now, that's ultimately going to be dependent on the veteran if they want to take an online course or an in-person course. But I would suggest to take a brick and mortar primarily because of the amount of potential of sustenance allowance the veteran can earn while they're attending. Another thing that the VRAP also offers is it offers a yearly book and supply stipend. Now that depends on the total number of units that you are going to be, or the person is going to be attending. So that can come up to about, 1,000 to 1,500 a single semester. So it's only a one-time benefit that they'll be receiving. And then on a monthly basis, that's where they'll be getting the sustenance allowance, which is if online it will be 871, and so in an in-person will be 3,354. So it has a lot of incentives to, why vets should pursue training with VRAP, and primarily because of the allowance that it offers when attending a class.
Okay, so next we have a little bit of information on how it is that someone can apply. So you'll need a computer with internet access and some time in order to fill out the information. This link actually takes you to where it is that you can access the application, and there you go, apply for the Veteran Rapid Retraining Assistance Program. And then you just go ahead and click on that link there, and it guides you through. And they do a really great job with the websites and just kind of like trying to explain what it is that you need to do in a very short and sweet way. So pretty good stuff.
Yeah, for many veterans who've applied for veterans discount or any kind of veteran verification through any kind of agencies, if they've done that in the past, ID Me might be a good way to sign up for VRAP because they already should have an account with them. Another one is My Healthy Vet, which is kind of like a messaging system, but there's a fillable form that you can complete in there. And of course, everybody's favorite is going to be eBenefits, which is the DS login. Now, there is going to be some issues with the DS login, especially if they've never applied for VBA benefits before, or if they are a much older veteran, their account may not have been activated or transferred over. But if they chose that route to sign in, they'll most likely have to convert their account from basic to premium in order to submit an application for education benefits. But for the most part, most veterans are going to most likely sign in with the ID Me option, because like we've applied for a lot of like veterans discounts in many organizations in the past, and they also verify that we're also a vet. So this is one good source to use. Again, having a computer is a requirement to apply for this. I'd like to say that there is a phone number that they can use. Um, but unfortunately that there isn't. So it's all done through online at this time. Another thing, oh, I'm sorry, Amelia, this is your part right here.
No worries. So as far as what you're going to get back as far as the decision goes, it usually takes about 30 days for VA to decide. And then they will let you know by mail if they need more information. As far as the decision goes, if your application is approved, you'll get a certificate of eligibility, which you can, or an award letter in the mail, which you can then take over to the VA certifying official at your school. And this person is usually in the registrar's office or financial aid office, and you're probably already connected with them. If you're submitting this information anyway, it'd be a good idea to reach out to them prior to taking the certificate over, and maybe even before it's approved, just so that way they know that you're coming and they can start setting up to be able to best assist you. If your application isn't approved, you'll get a denial letter in the mail. So that's basically how the whole approval process goes, application and approval process.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that last point. Generally, when you apply for admissions at the school, you'll automatically get linked up with the veterans representative for that institution, and that tends to happen during the financial aid process. So, you know, if there is a school that is on the listing that the vet wants to attend, most likely they're all automatically going to be connected with that person that verifies their training. So now that the vet did the training, they were approved. Or excuse me, they were approved. They did the training and they graduated. The next part would be is that it's very similar to how VRNE has been operating, which is when a veteran receives services from VRNE, which is Chapter 31. When they complete their training, their profile will get submitted over to their local workforce development agency. So for California, that would be EDD. And so when EDD receives the education profile, they can then the DVOP or the leaver can then help that veteran out with their resume, their cover letter writing, interviewing, as well as job leads that pertains to the training that they just graduated from. Now that is the goal. However, though, sometimes depending on where the veteran wants to relocate to, this is why, you know, doing a labor market information is extremely important, especially when the veteran decides to relocate to a different state or to a different county. So if they did their labor market and it shows like, oh, there's actually a pretty good probability of getting a job after completing, let's say, HVAC in a Santa Clara County, but they decide to move to, let's say, you know, like Washington, where you know, the AC isn't really much, it's not really required there. So now we're looking at, all right, well, what's the probability of getting an HVAC job in the state of Washington where, you know, AC isn't really used as much as, I mean, from my perspective, it's not really as hot there as it is in California. So, you know, once that, like I said, once that veteran completes the program, EDD will pick up their profile, and also they'll continue the services with them. Now, another thing too, because VRAP is following post 9/11 or VRNE guidelines, veterans that are in the VRAP program can also get an extension on their sustenance allowance. Historically, I've seen about a 3 to 6 months of extension, and that's also depending on whether or not there's a labor market for that region. But once that extension is done, I mean, unfortunately, there's really not a whole lot that the VA or EDD can do to say that, we're having a hard time finding a job, due to for the training that you just passed. We won't be able to continue, the VA won't be able to continue to pay you a sustenance allowance of, either an all online class or the brick and mortar. But from what I've seen in the past, it's been extended up to 6 months in some cases, but the shortest I've seen is up to 3 months. There is an alternative to VRAP just for those that don't, uh, get approved for the program. And, Amelia will talk more about that one a little bit.
Thanks, Naomi. So yes, I always encourage veterans to get connected with the Employment Development Department, at least here in the state of California. I would encourage it in any other state as well. Every state has their own version of the Employment Development Department. They just might be called something different, but they are services that are provided through the state, and they work through WIOA. With the DOL, they basically get funding, federal funding, that they're supposed to use to assist people in getting retrained. So there are other avenues. So let's say a veteran does not qualify for VRAP for whatever reason. Getting connected to the state Employment Development Department is a great thing for veterans who are interested in continuing their job search, because they can find out about those different ways of getting training. Here in the Valley, I know that there is a grant coming through. I don't know the name of the grant just yet, but with the Workforce Services Agency, which is actually the county, and they're going to be providing some training to veterans, and it's actually a veteran-specific grant. The state, with WIOA, they're mandated to work with, I believe, like 27 agencies that they're supposed to reach out to, and one of the groups that they're supposed to reach out to are disabled veterans. So veterans who are having a hard time getting employment because they have barriers to employment, but they could qualify for these grants as well. So just keep that in mind, that just because a veteran does not qualify for VRAP, for this education benefit specifically, that there are other alternatives, and just to reach out and continue to do the legwork, and just asking, hey, I didn't qualify for this. What is it that I do qualify for? I encourage you all to ask that question, to encourage the veterans that you're working with to ask that question, because there very likely is something else that they can probably dip into so that they can get their training squared away.
Yeah, and we're also going to be doing a presentation with the DOL's WIOA's program as well too, so we can give you a much detailed idea as far as like how to utilize that benefit. And if your veteran is already receiving unemployment, that would be the best route to pursue, because if for one, VRAP doesn't allow individuals that are already receiving a state-funded program for training. So WIOA would be the alternative resource for that as well. But before we move on, I want to take a look at what LMI and in using that benefit to determine the probability of employment opportunities. So I'm going to go to some of the nation's high demand occupation. I'm going to make it as simple as possible. So with the Silicon Valley, we are pretty much high on computer and mathematics occupation. So when we go to the labor market information, and I'm going to use Santa Clara County for right now, we can see that there is a listing for occupations with the fastest growth, and then high wage occupation within Santa Clara County. So let's take a look at one of the approved training from ABCO, which is after doing the research on this company, it's all an online course. So if you look at one of their training that they offer, it's going to be A+ certification, which is a CompTIA certification. And if we look at the labor market information with the fastest growth in Santa Clara County, and we just do a quick search on computer, we can see that computer occupations is actually a pretty high up there on the demand, right? So there's about a probability of 144,000 estimated now that's working in our county. Their projection is 167,060 probable occupations that will be open between 2020 to 2028. This data is updated on a quarterly basis. So even though it says 2028, that's just kind of like how they gauge their data bank. But since it's updated on a quarterly basis, this information here is always going to be changing, as well as the information here is also going to be changing too. Now we can look at the county's occupation with the highest wage, and we're using the same search group, which is computers. And we can see here that computer hardware engineers, which is, I would say, pretty close to a CompTIA A+ candidate. And if we look at what their highest earned income is going to be $76.46, and their lowest is going to be at $62.14. So this is a pretty good indicator that, not only is there going to be a job for the vet if they complete that training, but then we can also see that this is the probable, possibility of how much their earned income is going to be. Now let's take a look at another training from ABCO. I'm not even going to look at programmer because we already know that programmers make a ton of money in Santa Clara County. So let's look at network administrators, which is a CCNA. And we'll just go to the highest wage. So for CCNA, the computer network architect is about the same, which is about $58.07 is their lowest, and then our highest is at $77.48. So again, it shows that there is a probability of a job, and and it also shows like what could I potentially earn from completing this program. So this is why LMI or any state level labor market information is extremely important to not only determine jobs available, but if they were going to relocate to a different area, they also need to kind of know, like, am I going to be able to work there if I move there? So housing and employment is one and one. It's hard to work at a place when you have no place to live, and it's also hard to find a place when you have no work to pay for the rent. So this is why we like to use LMI to make that determination of and guide our vets to the appropriate training that would best suit for them in terms of long term rather than a short term, which a lot of our vets are looking for is just a short term fixes. And so that's pretty much it for our presentation. It's very, very quick. So to summarize, we talked about what VRAP is. It's a program that pays for training, vocational training, and in some cases, an associate's level training. And what can it be used for? Well, unfortunately, it doesn't have a whole lot of availability in what training to pursue. So it will have a restriction on what kind of vocational training that it will pay for. Also, the school has to be in the approved listing of as a training provider. If the student would like to pursue training that is not in the approved listing, they can go about and getting that school approved for VA payment. But in terms of getting that approved in a timely manner, that's like a wishful thinking because we don't know how long that's going to take. So it's always best to just why don't you just go to the schools that are already in approved so that way we don't have to, get that institution approved for VA to pay. And we talked about like how to apply for VRAP, which is, unfortunately, it's going to have to be all done online. There are three options to do them, but primarily most veterans are going to have login information from ID.me, or also the other one would be e-benefits. But for those that have have registered with VBA before, they'll be able to access that. And of course, we talked about the alternatives, which is the Department of Labor's WIOA or WIOA. So I'd like to open the room for any questions, any kind of concerns that anybody has about the program. I'd like to open that up to everybody.
I have a quick question. Thank you, Neoni and Amelia, for the presentation. I think my question is, so is all veteran eligible for this, or is it just for veterans who are like healthcare eligible or service connected?
So that's a great question. So in terms of VBA doesn't really look into healthcare eligibility. VBA is a whole separate entity. So if the veteran if the veteran is a non-dishonorable veteran, they should still be able to qualify. They just have to make sure that they meet the veteran eligibility. And that would mean like if they've, have had at least 180 days of active duty, or if also they've also been discharged with a service record that is not dishonorable discharge. Did that answer your question?
Yes. And then my second question is, I didn't get it when Amelia was saying, she said you have to be between the ages of 24 and 50.
22 and 66.
Oh, 22 and 66. Okay. Thank you.
Correct.
Yeah, 22 and 66. So, like I said, VRAP is very, very restrictive, and it's understandably so because there's only so much available funding, and they're also only allowing so many people to participate in the program. Any other questions? I don't see any in the chat box. But if anybody has any follow-up questions for us, you can always just shoot us an email or shoot us a text message. Our contact information is listed on this page here. We'll stay here a little bit longer, but if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and end our presentation. But we'll go ahead and stay for follow-up questions if needed. Thank you so much for attending, and we look forward to hearing from you guys.
Yes, thank you guys for attending.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.